No, I don't think it is just yet. We are still waiting for you. So once you're comfortable and feel as if you're able to go, then we can go with the live stream.
No, I think we should. I think we should press on. I've wasted enough of everybody's time. So no, Liam,
Okay.
as long as all the members who are going to be there are
Yes,
there,
yeah.
I think we should press on.
Okay, that's fine. Look, if you can hear that, if you could just press the live stream button, please, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep, we're live now.
Thank you, members, once again for your attendance at this Standards Committee meeting. If I could start, Leslie, do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, from Councillor Mrs. Rickaby.
Thank you very much. As I say, once again, welcome to everybody, and thank you very much for giving up of your time. Apologies for the late start. The chairman, unfortunately, isn't the world's greatest IT expert, so I got into a bit of mix-up. So if we could just press on with the agenda, I would imagine that all members have made their disclosures of interest in relation to the necessary legislation. If anybody has an item to raise now, could you please do so? Excellent. If I could then move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which was the 10th of June. Those minutes have been circulated. What I need to establish, are they a true record of the events?
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Excellent.
Chair, I think we need to acknowledge who's present in the meeting as councillors under our virtual constitution at the start of the meeting.
Indeed, you are correct, Councillor. My apologies for that.
No.
Can I actually move on to that item now then, please, if it would be possible? Unfortunately, my phone is just letting the person who is speaking show on my screen. So if you could all just follow around, advise of your attendance at the meeting, please. We'll start with you, Councillor.
Chair, shall I just read out councillors' names? And they can save
please,
them.
Leslie. Yes, please, Leslie.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Dungworth. Councillor Gallagher.
We need people to mute the microphone when they're not speaking, please.
Councillor Homer.
Present with a few technical difficulties, but here.
Councillor Murray.
Present.
Councillor Swinburne.
Present.
Councillor Webb.
Present.
And Parish Councillors Tebbit
Present.
and Wallace. Councillor Wallace.
Councillor Wallace is on mute, but is visually indicating that he is present.
And the independent person, Karen Milner.
Present. Got it.
That's everyone, Chair.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Thank you very much, members. Yes, thanks, Councillor Dungworth. Yes, if I could just return quickly and go to the minutes again, just to make sure that we're all happy with the minutes.
Yep, agreed.
Thank you.
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 Councillor Homer agreed.
Thank you.
I wasn't present, Chair.
Thanks,
Councillor Onslow.
Councillor. Yeah, understand, Councillor Gallagher. Thank you. If we agree the minutes, then I can move on to the report of the monitoring officer, please, in relation to initially the Local Government Association consultation. Liam, if you'd like to take the lead from now, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will do, but first of all, can I just ask that you can all hear me okay?
Yep. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. To the meat of the meeting, really, and because of the technical problems, I'm not going to speak for too long because I realize that people are having some difficulty. But just briefly, then, you will only be too aware of some of the background to the presentation of the report today. The Committee on Standards and Public Lives review of local government ethical standards back in 2018, and then your own response to their report of January 2019, all of which, of April 2019, all of which has culminated in the issue of the Model Code of Conduct by the Local Government Association in June of this year, on the 8th of June. And they have presented the report for consideration not only by principal authorities such as the County Council, but also by the lower tier of councils, if I can describe it as such, including, as far as Northumberland is concerned, your parish and town councils, and no doubt they will be making their own individual responses, either as an authority or indeed as an individual member, as well as maybe representations, I understand, and Councillor Willis might be able to comment on this, through the Northumberland Association of Local Councils. The code doesn't break tremendous new ground. I think you'll probably all appreciate the language of the new code is very much akin and similar to the existing code that the Northumberland County Council have currently adopted, and indeed is very similar to the previous Model Code of Conduct that was issued by government all the way back in the year 2000. It doesn't also address all of the recommendations of the Committee on Standards and Public Lives report, in that it cannot obviously affect any legislative change that might be necessary, perhaps in relation to the scope of the code, or perhaps more critically, as far as your previous considerations are concerned, the available sanctions that there might be in the event of a breach, if a member is found to have breached the code of conduct. But it does attempt to provide a degree of consistency across the country in relation to members' code of conduct. It's not something that your authority or any authority are duty bound to adopt. It's presented as a template for ongoing consideration, ongoing adoption. It can be, indeed, it can be adopted, or you could recommend to council that they keep the current code, or perhaps adopt an amended version of the code to reflect any and subject to any statutory requirements. Just looking at a little bit detail as to the model code itself, you'll see in the report that it makes reference to the scope as being where a member is acting or giving the impression as acting as a member or representative of their authority. You may think that that is wording that's fully in accordance with the current code. It does, though, however, reflect a subtle change, because at the present moment, giving the impression as acting in an official capacity relates only to being a representative of the council and not a member, and that has given some challenge to those seeking to interpret the code previously, and has resulted in some case law, which is not always at times the most easy to interpret and to understand. So that subtle change does give a greater clarity as to the scope of the code, I believe, and I trust you do as well. It also aims to apply the code to all forms of member communication and interaction, particularly on social media. And again, we've had some considerations to challenge us in relation to in what capacity a member is seen to be acting whilst on social media, whether it's in a personal capacity or in an official capacity. So the code seeks to present that, as I think the committee had, the Committee on Standards in Public Life had recommended, seeks to present that any interaction by a member on social media should be deemed to be or presumed to be in an official capacity. I should point out that the scope of the code, as I mentioned just now, as well as the application of the code in all respects, whether in the private life or official capacity, would require legislative change. The code also, and the consultation document also makes reference to the adoption and use of a social media code, either as a discrete document or included within the code itself. And that's a matter for your choice or recommendation to council for their choice rather. You have your own, the authorities has its own social media code, which perhaps is a little bit historic and is in need of refreshment in any event. And that could be done, as I say, either as a discrete document or within any new amended code of conduct. The model code introduces the concept of civility for the first time, which is defined within the document as a politeness and courtesy in behaviour, speech, and in the written word, none of which would be, I think, at all contentious in terms of what members would be expected to aspire to by way of their conduct. It gives a definition of bullying, which wasn't previously present, I don't think, in the previous codes, as well as a definition of harassment, which will be useful for those of us who have to interpret alleged misconduct in the context of a complaint. It deals with gifts and hospitality as well, although you yourselves, the committee, have adopted a discrete protocol in relation to gifts and hospitality. So I'm not sure that there is any need for you to address much attention in relation to that particular aspect, other than the financial threshold, which you'll see is up for debate within the consultation. The internal resolution procedure, which it's recommending, is really just seeking to codify some of the things that are happening at the moment, both within the formal confines of your own arrangements for the consideration of complaints, but also in an informal manner that we have seen does bear some fruit in terms of trying to resolve complaints as quickly and as effectively as possible. But in terms of sanctions, that the thorny issue that you've wrestled with for some time now over the years, whilst there are recommendations from the Committee on Standards in Public Life to strengthen these will also require legislative change. There will be no power without government's permission or sanction to suspend a member, for example, or indeed to disqualify a member. So that does need some attention from government, regardless of what you might recommend to council to do in relation to this, to any new code. Some subtle changes in relation to interest. The Table 1 interest, as is described in the document, retains a disclosable pecuniary interest test as evident and current within the Localism Act 2011. The Table 2 really just replicates what you've got in your own code. It's not present in the Localism Act, but you've got it in your own code. And it provides, however, for a member to speak in relation to those interests or where they have an interest. But critically, it's only in the context of where members of the public are allowed to otherwise speak, and the member, should they wish to speak in that scenario, would have to withdraw from the meeting once they have spoken. I've taken upon myself to prepare a draft response, and I would stress it is a draft response to the questions within the consultation questionnaire in Appendix 3, and that's just a matter for your own consideration as to whether you agree with those responses or want to seek amendment to them, or indeed if you want to add substantively otherwise to the consultation through some other discrete forms of comment or response. Chairman, I'll stop there, just conscious of the fact that we do have some technical difficulties, and I would want the members to have their full say in relation to this item.
Yeah. Yeah, struggling there, Brian. if I can, Leslie, I'm struggling to see members who might be indicating that they wish to be involved. So what I have at this stage is a message from Councillor Homer asking to make an intervention. So if you could enable Councillor Homer to access and present her information, and thereafter, if you could advise me of who is wanting to engage in discussion, I'd be obliged. Councillor Homer.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for the difficulties I'm having with this. I just can't do sound and vision at the moment. Just in terms of the document, I do like the consistency side of it, and I do like the fact that it does seem to be quite easily understandable. And thank you for Liam for doing the draft responses on this. I think that clarity over capacity and the scope of communications is absolutely essential. And, you know, I think that's absolutely imperative that that's included. I'm not entirely convinced that it goes far enough on people, you know, on members understanding, you know, what they're doing, or what their responsibilities are, and what they're doing and when. Just in terms of your comment about this social media policy, I would like to look at that and see whether we could do any kind of update on that. And I really wanted to ask a question of Liam, really, about induction training, and whether, I don't know that really it's for the code of conduct, but I always feel quite strongly about these things that, you know, we have these written down, but how do we let members know that this is actually what they're obliged to uphold, you know, rather than just a piece of paper in a booklet. And then we do quite an involved induction, or we did back in 2017, and I'd like to think we did a bit more on this next year with the local elections. And other than that, completely agree with the lift on the threshold, and also, you know, like all of us, I think, and we've discussed this many times over the years, about sanctions, but, you know, thank you for explaining that, really, and sort of preempting that would be something we would be interested in. That's my comments. Thank you. I hope you caught them.
We did, thanks, Councillor Homer.
Thank you, Councillor.
Chairman, do you want me just to answer directly the question that Councillor Homer posed to me regarding the training that members have
Yes,
received in the past?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, Liam, because I think it probably will at some stage need review. But yes, by all means, if you answer directly.
Okay, Councillor Homer did mention the involved induction process that we did have back in 2017. I'm pleased to say that as part of that, there was a session presented by me on the member code of conduct as well as general governance issues. Unfortunately, despite it being badged as compulsory, all I'll say is that the attendance at that training wasn't full by any means.
Are you still there?
I'm still here, Chairman. I'm sorry. I should have said I've stopped at that point.
Yeah, sorry. All I have is a screen that has your name. That's what I've got in front of me, I'm afraid.
Councillor Homer, sorry, Councillor Dungworth is indicating that she wishes to speak, Chairman.
Councillor Dungworth.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, and I know we're going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I'm wondering about, in terms of the induction, I know that sometimes induction can be quite onerous for new members who work or have caring responsibilities. And I'm wondering whether it would be possible to develop an online training module that is absolutely mandatory and has to be completed within the first month of being a councillor, say. I think there are other areas as well that we have as mandatory, like child protection, safeguarding. These are off the top of my head. But, you know, I think we maybe need to look at that as a more cost-effective and time-effective way of people engaging. So that was my first thing. My second thing was just really a question on the wording in your report, Liam. And it's on page 3 under B, where you talk about widening in scope with a rebuttable presumption. I don't know what that means.
Just dealing with that first, Chairman, if I may, it just means it just means that instead of a monitoring officer such as myself beginning to consider whether or not a member was acting in an official capacity or in a private capacity, my starting point in the context of a complaint, for example, my starting point in terms of the presumption is that they were acting in an official capacity, but that's rebuttable, that if there were other circumstances which were capable of being interpreted in such a way that would indicate that, notwithstanding the presumption, the member was acting in a private capacity, then that's acceptable, that's rebuttable. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that makes it makes sense, and also makes sense in terms of looking at investigations. To me, that would seem to be the way to go. I've got a question, but I don't know if you want to answer about induction first.
Yes, it's a very good idea, and it's something I will be recommending to senior management that is taken up, that there is some form of online training, you know, through the learning portal, which should capture all members that might otherwise struggle to attend a physical presentation, notwithstanding the difficulties that we might have with physical presentations, even in May of next year.
Councillor Dungworth, if I may quickly interject, I agree entirely with the points that you're making. I think it's also something we should bring to the consultation process, because I think it is worthy of merit and discussion across the board for the Local Government Association. But in line with some comments that I've seen from Councillor Homer, I would also suggest that we've got to include town and parish councils just to be all-encompassing. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we sort of do that already, because I think actually for us to provide face-to-face training for the number of people you're talking about spread across the geography they're spread across is again unrealistic probably. So that's another way that having some kind of remote training, even if there's a way of doing it in a webinar session so that people could be got together in their parish halls or whatever.
Excellent
also
idea.
Aware of communication connectivity issues that we're experiencing today, and that will be 100 times worse, I would suggest, with some of the town and parish councils. So I think it's just about looking at but several different ways of delivering this, and then I think it's easier for us, particularly those of us who may have some authority with other members, to be able to say you have to do this, and there are 3 different ways that you can do it.
Councillor Wallace, were you looking to come in there?
Yes. Firstly, may I apologise to the chair. New piece of equipment, and it took a little bit of signing in. Can I respond, obviously, as a parish councillor? Next year, as you know, it is the local election, so there will be quite an intake of new town and parish councillors, I'd imagine. And I agree with what's been said about providing the training. But I must remind the committee that NALC has an excellent record of training their members themselves. And perhaps, and I know Liam has a good relationship with Stephen Rickett, the Chief Officer, in getting their heads together. I'm sure NALC can perform that. I'm also aware, because Liam mentioned before that I may have something to say. And what I have to say is actually being forwarded by Dr. David Francis, who some of you may be well aware of, who used to be the Chief Executive of CAN and Secretary of Northumberland Association of Local Councils. David is now the Chairman of the Small Councils on National, and the National have responded to the LGA. So your Commission Chair, it'll only take no more than 2 minutes. I'll read out what he's written to Liam, and it'll be a matter of record. It's very simply, there seems to be a widespread feeling in the local council sector that the code should preferably be based on clear rules rather than the broader principles in the LGA draft code, which may be subject to different interpretations. Because of the way in which the LGA draft has been structured, it is certainly not an easy read, and it is unlikely to be understood by a large number of local council members, especially new, untrained local council members. The Standards Committee may also wish to bear in mind that an increasing number of Shire County areas, like yourselves, are going unitary, which means that individual monitoring officers are becoming responsible for thousands of local council members. It is not just practical for those monitoring officers to supervise and provide ongoing advice to such a large number of councillors. The new code must therefore be as clear as possible to stand on its own 2 feet. And finally, Chair, the committee papers for today's meeting do not seem to address the aspiration that the LGA code should apply to local council members as well as principal authorities. There definitely seems to be a difference there. Thank you, Chair.
Not a problem, Councillor Wallace. I think that there is certainly an issue in terms of Shire counties like our own, that perhaps some of the people who are engaged with the LGA haven't perhaps taken on board as well as they could have done. Part of the response that we will make will be an attendance by myself at a webinar for the LGA, where I will be putting forward, obviously, items that come from today's agenda, but also stressing the need for a better piece of thinking in terms of how parish and town councils in specifically rural areas can be better engaged in this particular process. So we will bring that to bear. I think what will need to happen before that date is that myself, Liam, will probably have to get together to sort of formulate that process so that I can, with a degree of clarity, bring that to the attention at the LGA when I attend that particular meeting. But thank you for the comments. It's much appreciated. Do we have any other members who are looking to comment?
Councillor Tabbott would wish to comment, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Tabbott, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, sir, I've listened carefully to what colleagues have said, and I agree with all of them, but I think I would just want to stress, I did actually prepare myself a paper, and believe it or not, I can't print it off this morning. My computer's causing all sorts of problems. But my one thing that I wanted to stress was that I've always believed that, bearing in mind, it's not just about what we perceive in ourselves as councillors, but how others see us, that I've always felt the onus should always be that a councillor is acting as a councillor unless they can prove that they are not. And it's always what other people perceive. And so I would have liked to have seen that part strengthened. And I think Councillor Homer and Councillor Wallace were also saying similar things. And Councillor Dungworth. So I would certainly urge that we say about members are normally seen to be acting as councillors, even if they don't think they are. And I think that's very important.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. We want to come in, Andrew?
Councillor Dungworth is indicating, Chairman.
Sorry. Councillor Dungworth, please.
Hi, thanks, Chair. I totally agree with Andrew, and I think, you know, those of us who've been involved since the inception of this understand that that was what it was about. It was about public perception as much as our intention, and that we need to think about what that perception might be from the public. But I think, you know, standards, the legislation, the documentation that goes with it has been dogged from the start by inconclusive, confusing language and things that are left up to interpretation, so therefore are open to challenge. And anything that can, as has been pointed out, just things need to be simple. If there's one thing we've learned through this current crisis, is you just need very simple messages and language for people to understand, and then there's no wiggle room. The other point I wanted to make, and I'm aware that this involves some primary legislation, so it's not necessarily, well, it's not in our power to change, but we have always, I think, reflected a common frustration about the lack of teeth that standards committees and the legislation around them have, and an awful lot of work goes into maintaining this this system. But actually, at the end of the day, there's not a lot comes out of it, and I think we should be making that view strongly to the government through this consultation.
I would entirely agree, Councillor Dunga. I think they're good point, well made. And as I say, we will be gathering a thought process, if you like, from today's meeting and our previous documentation and consultation processes, and we will be putting that forward in the strongest possible terms we can. Liam, I cannot obviously identify if there's anybody else looking to engage.
Chairman, I can't see anyone else. What I would stress, though, is that I can't at the present time, and forgive me if I'm missing anybody, I can't see Councillor Gallagher, nor can I see your independent person, Karen Milner. But everyone else, I think I can see, and none of them are currently indicating they wish to speak.
That being the case, if I could ask Councillor Gallagher, do you wish to add anything to the debate?
No, I wouldn't like to add anything to it. It's been a very good and clear debate. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. Karen, as independent person, are there any comments or concerns or any issues you'd like to raise before we move on?
No, I agree with what's been said by other people.
Yeah. To be fair, Karen, the likelihood is that you, I and Liam at some stage will be getting together to, in one form or another, perhaps by another one of these wonderful IT type meetings, to chew the fat on what it is we're going to put towards the LGA consultation when we do the webinar in August.
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else from any other member, obviously I would like your consensus that we are happy for myself, Karen and Liam to put together those thoughts and create our presentation, if you like, to the LGA consultation process, and obviously we will report back thereafter. There is no need for a vote or an indication, but unless anybody has any other comments or any concerns, I'll take it as read that we're happy with that as a process.
That seems to be agreed from the nods I'm getting, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your considerations, members. As I say, we will continue this process, and I will report back to committee after the meeting in August, where we should have some more clarification, if not necessarily all the answers. That being the case, if we could then move on to the second part of your report, Liam.
Sorry, Chairman, just struggling as always with the mute button. Yes, just a short complaints progress report as normal, Chairman. Apologies for the delay in the issue, but I was able to update it right up to the last minute before issue, so it is very current, and there's nothing further to report on it. I'm happy to take any questions that any members might have on that. Thank you.
You and Leslie be able to see if anybody is indicating.
I can't see anybody at present, Chairman. No, nobody seems to wish to ask any question.
Would anybody like to vocalise? No. Good. That being the case, then I'll accept that that is the report dealt with. Thank you very much, Liam. Thank you, members, for your consideration and for all your help. Do any members have any urgent matters of business that's been none brought to my attention and none to Liam's or Leslie's as far as I am aware? If you do, could you indicate vocally, please? Excellent. That being the case, I can conclude the meeting with the fact that we will confirm the date and the time of the next meeting. I would like that to be something that we are all face to face with, but it may well be that we are still in this particular process. And if that's the case, regardless, I will be happy to see you all again. Members, thank you for all your efforts. Liam, Leslie, thank you for yours, and for the guys who are dealing with the YouTube. And I'll conclude the meeting. Thank you for your trouble. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.